Black pandering and hashtag campaigns are the order of the day to show our solidarity. But in actuality, this so-called white, liberal-driven solidarity, we're all in this together, is really a new, modern, and more technically advanced form of slavery and racial prejudice. And sadly, some black leaders and some black commentators and black entertainers are playing right into it. Some knowingly, others not so. The best way to get people not to think is to simply get them worked up emotionally so that they react instead of act. And that is exactly what's happening right now. No one, I have said this before, I will say it again, absolutely no one is defending or trying to explain away what happened to George Floyd. The police officer that did that murder, and that is exactly what it was murder. The police officer that did that should spend the rest of his life in jail. No one is arguing that point. Nobody is coming to his defense. That said, that event is being used to trigger young people who sadly and unfortunately don't know history. And even more tragically, don't know their own history. Why? Because in the name of justice, in the name of we've got to make things right, you're allowing your own history to be erased, rewritten, revised. And the left, they love this because, as I've said before, and you need to search this out yourself, the true racist party is the Democrat Party. Remember, it was the Democrat Party that after the Civil War and during Reconstruction in the South, the Democrat Party created the Ku Klux Klan. President Johnson may have signed into law civil rights, but it wasn't because he got support from the Democrats on Capitol Hill. No, nay. It was the Republicans who voted with the president and put that over the top so that it could become the law of the land. Southern Democrats, also known as Dixiecrats, many of whom at the time were either just out of the KKK or still actively participating, would then go on to work with so-called white liberal civil liberties, civil rights guys like Joe Biden on issues like, we're not going to desegregate the schools through busing. You need to learn some history. And while you take to the streets and you demonstrate this anger and this outrage that you feel that there have been these injustices done to members of your community through the police department, yet somebody needs to speak up and say something, because as you burn flags and topple statues and demand that names like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson be removed from schools because, after all, these guys owned slaves, please remember that it was Thomas Jefferson who penned those words, "All men are created equal." See, he really did understand that in the eyes of God, there's one race, the human race. And within our DNA, within our blood, within our intellect, there is not a classification based on race. That's a Darwinian theory. That comes from secular evolution. It was Darwin who said, it was Darwin who taught that man evolved over millions of years, and not every group of man evolved at the same rate. Thus we have the separation of races. And in that separation of races, some are very still closely related to in physical appearance and in some lack of intelligence, the primates from which they evolved from. Do you understand that this is all leftist, liberal, democratic ideology? These people that are promising they have the help for the black community. They have your best interest. They have your justice. They have your liberty in mind. They are your plantation masters. They keep you in the inner city. They keep you in the housing projects. They keep you dependent through welfare, through free handouts. They're telling you, this is the level of life that we're going to give you. Shut up and be thankful and vote for us. Now, they will crouch it in the type of terms and terminology and the, I will say this, the base vulgarity, which, again, I get. It's how young people talk. But understand that when they cluster back within themselves in their safe, white, gated communities that you're not really a member of, that you're not really a part of, they want you there. They have their there. They will use you, exploit you for votes and for ways to raise money that they will then say it's for one cause and then deviate it to something else. I should say divert it to something else, but deviate's another good term too. So you're being lied to, you're being played, and again, as you rip down statues, as you rip down monuments, you're ripping down your own history. And you're not seeing the fact that the so-called people helping you are actually pandering to you. And whether you realize it or not, they are mocking your own history. Take the Democrats, led by Nancy Botox Pelosi, Chuck E. Cheese Schumer. Why, just the other day to show solidarity, they knelt in the Capitol Rotunda for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the length of time that the police officer had his knee into the neck of George Floyd. Now, the only one that couldn't kneel that day was Jerry the Nads Nadler, you know, the walking fire plug. He's just not physically able to. He's like Jabba the Hutt. They have to wheel him in on a board, kind of slide him in, but he couldn't kneel. So he kind of half stood, kneel, whatever it was he did. And of course they have their face masks on. And then they have their Kenya robe slash whatever the proper term for that is. Because again, they're showing solidarity. Yet, it was some black professors who came forward and said, those sashes that you're wearing were actually worn by members of the imperial families in Africa who were involved in selling their fellow man to the white Europeans. In other words, they were worn by the slave traders. Way to go. Great visual. But it was an absolute Freudian slip and an admission that the Democrats want black people on the new plantation, the plantation where they think that they're being given rights and they're being given recognition, and we're going to disband the police to make your communities even less safe, to completely just abandon you and just roll you out every 2 to 4 years when they need you to vote. Understand, that's who the Democratic Party actually is. And so then they fan into flame and they encourage you to be part of the cancel culture. Like, let's ban the movie Gone with the Wind from streaming services after all, referring to people of color in that movies as, quote, simple-minded darkies, and it was a glorification of slavery, etc., etc., etc. It is a horrible movie. But see, again, because you don't know your history, Hattie McDaniel, who played Mammy, was the first black American to ever receive an Academy Award in 1939. And now by removing that movie, you have removed a significant piece of your history. You now don't know, you have no focal point, no reference to when black entertainers were finally given a recognition that their contribution was valuable it was purposeful, it was important, and that black artists, black actors were more than just window dressing or moving scenery in a movie. They could contribute. Do you understand how significant that is? And by removing the movie and by removing other forms of your own culture and history, you're erasing what you as a people have accomplished.
It ain't fitting, it just ain't fitting.
I completely agree.
It ain't fitting.
What she said. Now the new hubbub is over Aunt Jemima. Now personally, I don't use maple syrup. I have type 2 diabetes. I avoid products like pancakes and maple syrup. By the way, no offense to the makers of whether it's Mrs. Butterworth or Aunt Jemima or any of the stuff that you buy in the supermarket. That's all artificial anyway. If I was going to use maple syrup, I would use the real deal. I'm originally from upstate New York. I've had real maple syrup, and it is good. But that said, Aunt Jemima, that's got to go. It's racist. It's insensitive. You know, some of these corporations would do better to actually explain the history behind things. Just before all of this broke, Land O'Lakes is going to remove the iconic Native American girl on their packaging because, after all, it's racially insensitive. What's heartbreaking is the elderly woman who, as a young woman, sat and posed and was there for the artist rendition of that, who himself, the artist, was Native American. There was nothing meant to be racially insensitive or prejudiced about that logo. Why wouldn't Land O'Lakes explain that Native Americans were actually involved in the design and the artwork of that logo? That's something to be proud of. But take Aunt Jemima. Originally, the caricature of Aunt Jemima was a minstrel figure. This woman that you see is named, or was named, I should say, Helen Green. Helen became the national spokesperson for Aunt Jemima in I believe it was 93. She was an ex-slave, a former slave. She survived, she made it. And she became the national spokesperson. She was a cook, and she had several other business endeavors, and she continued as the national spokesperson for Aunt Jemima until the mid-1920s when she passed away. Now, what's historically significant? They liked her likeness so much that they developed her likeness as the logo for the package. Oh, and she was the first black American to actually receive a product endorsement. Again, another pivotal point in your own history. And by simply reacting in an understanding of the times of now, not having an appreciation for how to put things into historical perspective, you lose your own history.
Ain't fitting.
Exactly right. And then Dave Chappell, the comedian. I happen to like Dave Chappell. Now, he and I wouldn't agree on a lot of things politically, and I've listened to his political commentary and comedy, and some of it I agree with, some of it I don't agree with, some of it I laugh at, some of it I go, oh, come on, Dave, you're better than that. But anyway, I get where he's coming from politically. Now, of course, when it comes to the matters of things like race, he has been wrong a time or two or 10. Like when he did the whole Hands Up campaign to show solidarity with Michael Brown, who never surrendered to the police. He fought with the police. He had just held up a convenience store. I should say roughed the place up. He did it physically. And then he tried to take the on-scene arresting officer's weapon away from him. And that's how he ended up being shot. He wasn't running away. He didn't have his hands up. He was fighting with the police officer. That said, Dave Chappell decided he needed to comment on what's been happening with the George Floyd protests, which he says are not riots. It's just the streets talking.
Do you want to see a celebrity right now? Do we give a what Ja Rule thinks? Does it matter about celebrity? No. This is the streets talking for themselves. They don't need me right now. I kept my mouth shut.
Yet he's going to comment. He's got a lot to say. Even though he said you don't need to hear him talking right now. He was going to talk, and he did for about 27 and a half minutes. Now, I don't begrudge him having that venue. Apparently, he did it on his own property, a few hundred people there. I watched it. I saw it. And I get it. I get the understanding. I get the anger. Some of his historical facts are inaccurate. Some are outright wrong. But again, right now, people are reacting emotionally, so you can't always process everything with facts. They aren't necessarily ready to receive it. But I couldn't help but notice, and I'm sorry if I'm a little bit wrong about this, and maybe I'm way off, but, you know, Dave Chappell starts a lot of his jokes with, well, I was smoking a joint and, well, I was smoking some weed and he looked like maybe he had done a little bit of that before he walked out there, because I realized this was not a polished performance. He wasn't there to do stand-up. He was there to do commentary, and he had some notes, but, you know, he played with his pack of cigarettes, and there were just times it was almost like, man, are you like going to sleep up there? What's going on? But of course, the liberal media wants to talk about how incredibly insightful he is, and that, wow, he is more than a comedian. He is an observationist of the culture and life.
Al, man, we're brothers. I agree with you 100% on this. And people, Al, I don't think appreciate the intellect that goes into joke writing and comedy and the way to express your thoughts to the general public and have them absorb that knowledge. You know, a lot of people don't know what that goes into doing that. So for him to have a special like this and talk to people that breaks through all barriers, race, color, everything, like a Dave Chappell, that's very special. So I think this is going to change the way a lot of people think. People are going to listen more to what Dave Chappelle is saying. So appreciate this man, because he is, like Al said, if not the greatest, one of the greats. Yeah.
Okay, but then he turned his attention in his rolling monologue to two women in particular, Laura Ingram from Fox News and Candace Owens. Now, personally, Laura Ingram, not exactly my cup of tea. One time she worked in the Bush administration. She has accomplished a lot. She is a single mother. She has worked in Washington. She is a lawyer. She had her own publication. She made her way in media at a time when women didn't do talk radio as far as political commentary. Women weren't taken serious as political commentators on television. They could be used sometimes as window dressing. They could sometimes be used as news anchors, but nobody really wanted to hear their, quote, take or opinion. And she pioneered a lot of things. Now, you don't have to agree with her ideologically. You don't have to respect or even like necessarily her politics. I get that. But Dave Chappelle just completely dismisses her because she said about LeBron James, shut up and dribble. And that just set Dave off. And he said, here's this white blank who's never accomplished anything. Yeah, actually she has, Dave. She's accomplished a lot. Nobody's taking away LeBron James' accomplishments. Credible basketball player. He's wrong politically. I would love to sit and talk with him politics. I'd sit and talk with him about basketball. But when she said shut up and dribble, what she was in direct reference to, hey, your thing is basketball, do that. Now, whether or not I completely agree with her assessment on that, to then degrade her and his choice of language referring back to Dave Chappelle. She's the C word. She's the B word. Where are the women? Seriously, where are you women? Where's the Hillary Rodham Clintons? Where's the Me Too gang? Where's the squad? Why is it that Black Lives Matter can say racist things and get a pass? Why is it that comedians, in particular now, black comedians, can continually refer to females as bees and hoes and, well, that's just part of the culture. That's just how it is. And then he goes on another rant against Candace Owens, and I get it. He doesn't like her. He thinks she's a sellout. Why? Because she has a different political point of view than he does. And again, that plays into the whole Joe Biden narrative. Well, if you vote for Trump, you're not really black. Well, if you're a conservative, you're not really black. That's a racist thing to imply there, Davey Chappell. Because, you know, you don't like the fact, you know, she pointed out his rap record, and that's got nothing to do with nothing. I get that George Floyd should not have been killed. But George Floyd certainly was, quote, in his life, no angel. And again, that is not in any sense justifying what happened to the man. And Dave Chappelle tries to make the point that she says that we've made him a hero. We didn't make him a hero. They made him a hero when they killed him.
LeBron James once said something about racism, and Laura Ingram, which I will say publicly anywhere, anytime, is a c***. Tell him I said it. Told one of Ohio's greatest residents ever, shut up and dribble. My friend is the best at something, and this is not the best at anything. She's a regular white with a platform. And I use the word all the time because this is black. Candace Owens, that rotten she's the worst. I can't think of a worse way to make money. She's the most articulate idiot I've ever seen in my life. She's so articulate, she can tell you how stupid she is precisely. And she told George Floyd's rap record on the internet. Oh, he was this, he did that, and he's a drug addict, and he's not a hero, and why does the black community make him a hero?
Again, the way he degrades females, and people laugh, and there are women sitting there, especially the stupid white women. Oh, he's funny. I get it. I guess I'm a B too. I guess I'm the C word too. Hey, white guy, go tell your white girlfriend she's the C word. Go tell her she's a B. See how far that gets you. But of course, there's no reverse discrimination or reverse racism or reverse tolerance. No, that's just a figment of our imagination. Dave Chappelle is not an insightful commentator on the culture. He's achieved success. Imagine that. Even in this so-called racist country, look at the success he has achieved. Should I put him in the same category then as an Al Sharpton? That he's gotten where he is, he's gotten rich, he's gotten wealthy by exploiting his own people, just being a street pimp? And Dave likes to talk about, you know, this is the street talking, the street's talking now. Okay. But as you blast Candace, you weren't even factually accurate in what she was doing. Yes, she listed out his George Floyd's rap sheet. And she wasn't talking about that George Floyd wasn't a hero in the sense that you're making him a hero. What she was saying is, what is it about the black community that every single time there is a criminal element involved, you want to run and immediately defend the criminal? You want to immediately make them a martyr. You burn down St. Louis for a criminal. And that was all she was saying. And by the way, she was quoting black authors who were saying it is the one thing within the black race that absolutely frustrates them, that you don't see any other race running to defend the criminal element within their race. That was her observation. See, that's a really deep talk to have, a real conversation to have. You up there kind of half drooling, sucking on cigarettes, acting a little bit stoned, and just sharing with us your anger. And to have white liberal commentators go, wow, he's so insightful. No, he's not. And he's contributing to the problem of the erosion and the erasing of the black history, the black experience. So you get rid of all the Civil War monuments, you get rid of all the Civil War movies and depictions. So what are you left with? Django Unchained? And so you have a generation of young people thinking that's their real history? Because you keep erasing all of this, you keep removing all of this, you're going to have a generation down the road. We don't need to learn anything about Martin Luther King. We don't need to be part of the NAACP. We don't need any of that. Hey, because everything that's a reference and a result of, you will have wiped away. You will have removed. You will now have revisionist history. This is why so many young people are in the streets right now and so angry, because they don't know their history. They don't see the progress that's been made. They don't understand what's happening. They don't understand that there was most definitely a time when just them taking to the streets like this, they would have been eradicated on the spot. I'm not justifying any of that. I'm saying we have got to learn to teach people to see things in historical perspective, which means you can't erase the history. You can't rewrite the history. You show the history for what it was, you learn from it, you better yourself, you move forward. Nobody's denying that reforms are not needed. And we're hearing some great ideas right now. And we're also hearing some absolute lunacy, idiocy, and stupidity. That said, ultimately, it's not about black versus white, left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, liberal versus conservative. It's about us. I'm talking about we the people, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, us versus them. The ruling class elite who love us fighting each other over things like race, while they take our wealth, our freedom, and our rights, and simply tell us, put the mask of fear on and line up. How's that for a little heavy-duty thought?